Good evening, everybody. The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. And seated in front of you this evening from my left to your right are Director Jackie Mosqueda-Jones, Director Kelsey Dawson-Walton, Director Jessica Craig, myself, Mike Ostafi, Director Tanya Simons, and Director Heather Douglas, and Interim Superintendent Dr. James Bauk. Welcome, everybody. Will we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board members, in front of you is tonight's agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to accept the agenda as is?
So moved.
By Director Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
By Director Simons. Is there any discussion? All in favor of accepting the agenda as is, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next agenda item is the audience opportunity to address the school board. There's one group here tonight. There's several representatives. I know a few will be brief, but we will hear them. And we also have two speaking regarding some contract issues. Let me do those first, and then we'll move on to the larger group. And I just wanted to read these guidelines. This is not having anything to do with who's coming up. We read them everything. Sometimes they seem a little direct, but I just wanted to go through them. So we've all done the speaker card. The board chair will call on each speaker who has submitted a speaker card, calling first on those addressing an item included in the current agenda, which neither of these two issues are tonight, and followed by those addressing topics not on the current agenda. Speakers be called in the following order: students, parents, guardians, employees, residents, and others. When called upon, please state your name and topic, and all remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole, not to any specific members or to any person who is not a member of the board. If more than three have organized to speak on the same topic, please designate a spokesperson who can summarize. I know we're working to have a few people speak on the main topic. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Longer time may be granted at discretion of the board, but we do have a full slate tonight. During this agenda item, usually not to exceed 20 minutes, subject, the board and administration will listen to comments, ask clarifying questions if needed, and respond when appropriate. The goal is to mainly listen. The board chair may delegate responsibility to the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to follow up with the speaker within a few days following the meeting. Comments and interactions between board members of the public are expected to be respectful, courteous, professional, and civil. And I, the chair, will be responsible for ensuring the interactions meet those standards and will disallow inappropriate interaction. In particular, speakers may not address criticism towards an individual district employee. Such concerns should appropriately be directed privately to the employee's supervisor or higher level administrator. And personnel concerns should be directed to individuals in the following order. Again, for future issues: building principal, executive director for HR, assistant superintendent, superintendent, and finally in writing to the school board. So I did want to make one comment as a couple people walk in. I was about to say our assistant supes are not here tonight because they are at a function at Park Center, but now they're here. So perfect timing. So first up tonight is Carol Fisher. In regards to changing the 5-hour ESPs to 4-hour ESPs.
Hi, my name is Carol Fisher. Chairperson Ostafi, school board members, interim superintendent Jim Bauk. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here as a homeowner, a taxpayer, a parent, a volunteer, and a teacher at Weaver Lake who served over 1,000 students in my career here. And I'm here to talk about the importance of ESPs in my classroom and the jobs that they do daily, and how I could not survive without the support staff in my classroom. They support students, they support the teachers, they help us keep behaviors under control, And these people understand their students. And it is vitally important for a school to be run well to have qualified ESPs. And after I made that point clear, I want to make sure I invite each and every one of you to come to our school, Weaver Lake, which is an award-winning magnet school, and we like to make sure everybody knows that they're welcome and that we would treat you like family. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carol. Next on the agenda is Michelle Fisher.
Good evening, board chairman, school board members, and interim superintendent. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Michelle Fisher. I am a parent, a former ESP of 8 years, and I'm currently a teacher in our district at Osseo Senior High in a Setting 3 skills classroom. I also want to take a few minutes tonight to share the value of our ESPs, or as I like to refer to them, extra special people. It has come to my attention that you are considering reducing ESPs with a 5-hour day to a 4-hour day. I am hopeful that some of the information I share with you tonight will help you understand how critical these staff members are to the success of our students. It is my belief that ESPs are a need and not a want. Some of their daily responsibilities for students they support include behavior management, implementing IEP goals and objectives through instruction, assuring that students receive their IEP accommodations, data collections, and other duties deemed necessary by the team. Our ESP members are a critical extension of the licensed special education teacher. They make it possible for the general education and special education teachers to differentiate and meet the unique needs of all of our students. ESP staff also support students being placed in the least restrictive environment with their peers. Some of you may or may not know that ESPs in the classroom also support our general education students as they circulate about the room. Without these staff members, students do not receive the services they so desperately need. Classroom behavior management becomes extremely challenging, and the learning environment becomes compromised for all learners. ESPs are critical members of our team. Students will suffer without their support. In addition, I'd like you to consider the fact that our district currently has 22 open ESP positions. Some of these are 4-hour positions. I am concerned that if you follow through with this particular plan, our current ESPs will be unable to remain in their current positions because they simply cannot afford to. They wouldn't receive benefits. ESP recruitment and retention are at risk. Therefore, our students are at risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up, we will start with Ms. Grady.
Hello, I am here today as the proud parent of a transgender student to bring more attention to the need of a gender inclusion policy. Gender nonconforming and transgender students make up nearly 3% of the school population, a figure that is consistent across rural, urban, and suburban Minnesota. This would be about 600 students in the Osseo district. That is too many students to adequately support on a case-by-case basis. I want to share with you tonight the story from a parent of a transgender student in the Osseo district who cannot be here tonight due to work. She writes that we moved to Maple Grove after my child had already transitioned to the gender he identifies with. And no one in his current school knows that my child is transgender because we are afraid. He transitioned at a different school in another district. It did not go well. The school was not supportive and allowed other parents to bully us. My child was not allowed to use the restroom of the gender he identifies with, and the administration did not support my child's preferred pronoun. It very quickly became hostile and incredibly uncomfortable for my child and my family. Because of this awful experience, this family came to the Osseo School District, and they did not tell anyone that their child is transgender. No one knows that this child was born female. Should they? The parent has so many questions. What if they did know? Would they protest at school, cause problems about which bathroom he uses, say their children can't hang out with my son anymore, beat him up or call him names? What if they bully him to the point he feels worthless and wants to commit suicide, like nearly 50% of transgender students? This family is truly afraid because they do not feel that there are adequate protections in this school district for their family without a specific gender policy. Without a policy, good intentions can fall flat when political forces come to play. We are asking you to consider a policy which would affirm students' requested pronouns, bathrooms, and activities with which they identify, so it would send a clear message that you will respect all students and protect them, so they and their families do not live in fear like this family does every day. I want to say thank you to that parent for letting me share their experience. And I want to say thank you
30
to the
seconds
amazing
remaining.
professionals that are here today to speak in support of children like mine. I am proud to work with you. I'm also grateful that parents, teachers, and staff of the Osseo School District continue to support all of our children. And they are here tonight to support you, the school board, to create and implement a gender inclusion policy. If I could have people here that are in support of the gender policy stand up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grady. Next up is Ms. Haley Karate.
Test. Hi, everyone. Good evening. School board members, superintendents, and audience members. My name is Haley Karate, and I am a proud gay woman and math teacher at Maple Grove Senior High. I'm here in support of an LGBTQIA+ inclusion policy, and because I see firsthand the need for it at our schools in District 279. I just want to share with you a little bit about my story to see where I'm coming from, but I actually grew up as a student in District 279, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I am a District 279 graduate myself, and I did not come out until after high school. This wasn't because of an unsupportive family or an unsupportive friends or unwelcoming teachers at District 279 schools, but it was because of an unwelcoming school system an environment where I was too afraid to ever state who I was. Once I started teaching, I also felt this once more that I could not share this about myself. But most importantly tonight, I'm here for our kids. Our district's mission is to inspire and prepare all students, and this is so often a community that gets silenced. For example, some things that I think that we should consider are having enough single-stall bathrooms for gender nonconforming students and transgender students so they can have their basic health needs met. I'm also here because our staff members in our district need to be properly trained to support our LGBTQIA+ students. And for example, learn how to address our students with their proper pronouns and names. Thank you all so much for your time. And I'm hoping to spread awareness and allyship to all and the much need for a gender inclusion and LGBTQIA+ policy in District 279. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Karate. Next up is, I think I'm right, Dave Edwards. And state your name and where you're from.
So my name is Dave Edwards. I'm from Minneapolis. I currently serve as a faculty member in the Hamline University School of Education, but my words here this evening are my own. I've previously worked as the lead instructor in the teacher licensure program in emotional behavioral disorders at the University of Minnesota, where I'm also finishing my PhD in educational psychology. In addition to my roles in higher ed, I work as a facilitator for the Human Rights Campaign's Welcoming Schools program, where I provide professional development on best practices to support LGBTQ students in K-6 schools. I've worked with staff in around 15 districts in Minnesota. I'm here tonight at the request of parents within your district, but also as a member of the larger community of parents of trans kids in Minnesota. We are reaching a tipping point in Minnesota, and increasingly school boards are starting to recognize that they can no longer remain on the sidelines regarding explicit policies for the inclusion of queer and trans students. Districts in St. Paul, Richfield, St. Louis Park have all realized that it is in their district's best interest to be proactive, and all of you have a really awesome opportunity to lead. And I hope you will seize that chance to create positive change in Osseo Public Schools by creating a gender inclusion policy for your students. First, I want to highlight that I know that the Minnesota School Boards Association continues to recommend districts handle the inclusion of trans students on a case-by-case basis, and that this is the way your district currently handles things. It's not widely discussed, but it's worth mentioning that MSBA has a problematic history of opposing protections for LGBTQ students. They fiercely advocated against the Safe and Supportive Schools Act and tougher anti-bullying protections, and were the lone dissenting vote when MDA passed the toolkit for supporting transgender students in 2017. In the past, districts, Anoka Hennepin, have fallen back on MSBA's recommendations as cover for an action on policy, but events from the last 2 to 3 years make that stance unsustainable and open up Osseo to many liabilities that are avoidable. To that end, I ask you to consider that the Minnesota Department of Human Rights has issued probable cause findings related to discrimination against trans students in public schools against several districts in the Twin Cities. Those findings align with the toolkit for supporting transgender students in Minnesota with regards to protections for facilities access and use of pronouns. I ask you to kind of do a cost-benefit analysis tonight of aligning your policies with the expectations set forth by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. Are you more protected against liability with a policy or without one? Are your queer and trans students more or less likely to have their needs met at a school with a gender inclusion policy? Keep in mind that no school in the United States has ever been forced to pay damages or settle a lawsuit because of a school policy protecting LGBTQ students. Lastly, I just want you to think about best practices, and they've shown that maintaining a positive school climate for queer and trans students is easiest when expectations for students, staff, and community members are defined in an easily accessible policy. Good school board policies take the burden of decision-making from school admin and staff on sensitive and contentious topics, and I am asking you tonight to take on that responsibility yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Next up is Mara Glupka.
Good evening, Board of Directors. Thank
Evening.
you for another opportunity to speak. I'm Mara Glupka from Richfield, here again to speak in support of a gender inclusion policy in Osseo. I'm transgender, retired, and have 3 great sons. I'm also very active in the world because I care very much about the fate of kids born like me. I care very much because I know they are innocents. I was them. I am them. Except I wasn't allowed to be in my youth. And it took almost 6 decades to find out what happiness really feels like. It was so profound, it took me by surprise. It almost didn't make sense to me because my imagination of happiness had never taken me that far. I had always known that happiness would be found through transition, but it was a happiness foreign to me for most of my life. I can't let that happen to kids. You can't pray away our gender identities, and you can't beat them out of us. It's all been tried over a long period of history, and it's cruel. That it's done mostly in the name of a loving God is, to me, outrageous. So many kids have died because people fail to reconcile love and faith. There's nothing more to it than that. Every major reputable medical and mental health organization in these United States supports us. Why? Because they have been working with us for decades and have concluded that affirming our identities is the right thing to do. I ask you to do the right thing as well. Harvey Milk once said, "It takes no compromising to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no survey to remove repressions." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glupka. And next up is Jen H. Jen, if you could state your name, please, and where you're from.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Halpus. I'm a parent of a transgender high schooler. I'm here because I'm familiar with case-by-case basis addressing the needs of gender diverse students. I want to say that gender diverse students in your district do exist. Parents of gender diverse kids are doing the best they can. They come before you today knowing more than you do about this topic, most likely. And I'm asking that you find a way to make time on your agenda for this gender inclusion policies that are outlined in the transgender toolkit by the Minnesota Department of Education. Please do not be dismissive of your local community asking the district for these policies. In the words of Superintendent Steve Unowski in Richfield Public Schools, they approved a gender inclusion policy over the summer. I was there for that. It was beautiful. His statement was their role as a district is to fulfill their role as a support system in the lives of gender diverse students. And the gender diverse students are part of the whole student body. So thank you for letting me speak. And good luck. It's not the greatest battle. I hope there's a way you can do this. There's a lot of opposition, and it's unfounded, and it's not fun. But you have the power to make that go away, because not only are there students and parents, there are staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hofmoos. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and for sharing your perspectives. I appreciate that, and glad we had the opportunity to listen. I think, as most of you know, new policy and policy revisions are developed through the School Board Policy Committee, which then brings recommendations to the board. And I anticipate the Policy Committee will consider whether board policy should be adopted or revised to address these concerns tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Next on the agenda is item number 5, and that is school board reports. And that is January 22nd, 2019 Policy Committee. And Director Craig, can you read the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have?
Go ahead. Go ahead and read the report.
All right. The School Board Policy Committee met at the ESC at 6 p.m. Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. Board members Jessica Craig, Heather Douglas, and Jackie Mosqueda-Jones attended. Also attending were Superintendent Jim Buck, Coordinators of Health and Safety Rachel Kohler and Dave Mordock, and General Counsel Tim Palmatier. The committee reviewed proposed changes to the following policies: Policy 806, Crisis Management, Policy 807, Health and Safety, and Policy 922, Non-Use of Chemicals on School Premises. All 3 policies, as rewritten or revised, were proposed for first reading and will be presented at tonight's meeting.
All right. Thank you, Director Craig. Were we missing something from the agenda?
Yes, and once again, I'm embarrassed, so.
All right.
Well,
And as soon as I figured that out, as I was waiting, I'm like, what did Jim do? So,
I goofed up once again, which
All right.
is, I'm very capable of. Superintendent's report, how about if we have that?
okay.
All right.
Do we have to adopt it, or I thought we were adopting it, it just wasn't appearing? So.
Yeah. For those in the audience and those viewing at home, we always have a superintendent's report. Part of that is points of pride, and we have some cabinet members all set this evening to share a few items with our community and those accomplishments of our mission. So go ahead, cabinet members.
In the category of Achieving Dreams, 6 Osseo area schools, students who excel in academics, athletics, and the arts have been named 2019 AAA winners at their respective high schools. They are Tyler Burkham and Charlotte Rolfs from Maple Grove Senior High, Eli Barlow and Hannah Carmen from Osseo Senior High, and Shantez Hester and Elizabeth Matson from Park Center Senior High. Adriana Robertson, who attends the Osseo Area Learning Center, was featured as a CCX News Standout Student on February 6. In addition to her high school studies, Robertson is also taking classes at North Hennepin Community College. She is leaving her mark on the OALC by painting a large anti-bullying mural that she hopes will inspire others at the school. Birch Grove Elementary School for the Arts and Weaver Lake Elementary, a science, math, and technology school, have reason to celebrate this month. Both schools recently earned the 2019 National Award of Excellence from Magnet Schools of America.
Our next category is contributing to community. Elm Creek Elementary students participated in their third annual Great Kindness Challenge this winter. Members of the school's Kindness Club reinforced important themes like kindness, caring, and respect in their school community. The week culminated with a door decorating contest, with Carolyn Olson's third grade class named winners for their kindness quilt and hands of kindness displays. Our next category is lifelong learning. On January 4th, middle and high school orchestra students in Osseo area schools came together for the first ever Fiddle Festival. This opportunity was organized by music teachers Matt Carone, Maple Grove Senior, Joni Kinneberg, Maple Grove Middle, and Heidi Stadola, Osseo Middle, and allowed 7th grade orchestra students to learn from and perform with high school musicians. After a full day of learning and rehearsing, the clinic culminated with an evening concert of fiddle songs.
The recent cold spell hasn't hindered creativity at Parkbrook Elementary. This winter, the school's C-Lab, or Makerspace, has been moved outdoors to provide students with opportunities to create and collaborate. This photo shows one frozen creation made of food coloring and a variety of icy shapes. Last, under the category of mission-driven employees, congratulations to Betsy Ernessy, 2nd grade teacher at Fernbrook Elementary, and Lucas Staker, 5th grade teacher at Birch Grove Elementary School for the Arts, for being named candidates for the 2019 Minnesota Teacher of the Year Award. In the weeks ahead, a panel of community leaders will name a group of semifinalists and finalists. You can read more points of pride on our website at district279.org.
And I have one thing to share this evening, and this week is School Board Recognition Week, and I want to recognize the important work of our school board. The key work of school boards is to improve student achievement and increase community engagement to promote education. In order to accomplish that, the school board sets a vision for the school district and determines strategies to accomplish those goals. The board sets in place a system of accountability to monitor progress on goals, and the board serves as an advocacy function for the community and staff support for these goals. Creating the conditions under which almost 21,000 students achieve performance standards is no small task. Add to that the responsibility of pre-K and adult learners, and it's easy to see the importance of school board service. I do think that our public understands that school board members have a tremendous impact on our children's future and the quality of life in our communities. I'm not always sure, though, that our community members and others understand the demands of school board service. Our board members spend countless hours preparing for and participating in regular meetings like tonight, but in addition, work sessions that are conducted once a month also, along with a number of committees that all of them sit on throughout the district as far as district committees are. Members also devote time to studying education issues and laws and listening to the interests of parents and students, like tonight in audience participation. You're never completely off the job, though, wherever you go. And our board members know I often use the phrase, when you're at Cub tonight or tomorrow and you run into these parents, this is what we should be thinking about, or employees or whatever, because you do. You run into parents and community residents all over our school community. In recognition tonight, you're receiving a packet of handmade cards, and each of you have that packet in front of you. And those cards were made by our community-based vocational assessment and training students. So thank you for your service, and we have a lot of work yet to do tonight. And thank you for letting me barge in, Mike, and change your agenda.
You know, what would it be without you messing up the agenda, Jim? So,
It would be a complete meeting.
well, thank you for those kind words, and I thank the team who put these together. These are very nice cards. They've done a very professional job on them, and they're very cool.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, and let me see, are there any, board members, are there any items that you would like to remove for separate consideration? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as is?
So moved.
Director Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Director Dawson-Walton, is there any discussion? For those not here with in front of them, on the consent agenda, which is typical of every time we do this, there's minutes of meetings, there's personnel, ads, you know, people moving in and out of the district, field trip approvals, fundraiser approvals, acceptance of grants, and tonight, and that's typical, and tonight we have our board meeting calendar. So those are the typical things that we approve when it comes up to the consent agenda, just so everybody's aware. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, next up is item number 7 or 8, I'm not sure which one. Number 7. So the first action item on tonight's agenda is the general fund budget adjustments for fiscal year 2020. And Mr. Meyer is going to present to us this evening.
Good
Ron?
evening, Chair Ostapi, Superintendent Bauk, and members of the school board. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to provide information about the fiscal year 2020 recommended operating budget adjustments and the fiscal year 2020 proposed capital expenditure budget. This presentation will include information for action items A and B on your board agenda. Our recommendation this evening will be for the school board to approve these budgets as presented. The recommendations being shared this evening are part of the annual budget planning process. Budget decisions are made using the Long-Range Financial Planning Framework, or LRFP. This framework includes a financial forecasting model that projects out for the next several years and provides the basis of our budget planning while focusing on financial sustainability. The budget decisions are evaluated using a collaborative process that engages multiple stakeholders. Budget planning includes aligning our resources with the mission and strategic plan, an assessment of the impact on productivity and essential services, and compliance with legal requirements. The school board engages in several work sessions throughout the budget development process, and at the January 8th work session, the board heard about and considered the budget adjustment recommendations. So this evening, our first action item for your consideration is fiscal year 2020 budget adjustments. We will first review the operating fund recommendations. In keeping with direction provided by the school board, the fiscal year 2020 general operating transportation budget adjustment recommendations includes no change in budget capacity. The only exception to that is for an increase in classroom FTE to support increases we anticipate in enrollment. An important feature of the LRFP process is that budget managers annually review their budgets and make recommendations to realign resources to better meet the strategic priorities of the school district. This ensures that the budget is directly tied to our district's mission. So while general fund recommendations result in no overall change to budget capacity, other than the enrollment-related staffing increases, it does redirect resources towards the following areas. The first one is the development and implementation of a teacher mentorship program. The second is an addition of 5 FTE special education teachers. The third is creation of an operations supervisor position at our high schools. The fourth is the addition of an assistant coordinator of facilities operations. And the fifth and last is the increase in responsibility for our payroll supervisor positions. The program efficiency, abandonment, and redirection, or PAIR summary, which is included in your board packet, provides details of the recommended adjustments along with the category for the change, the dollar amount, and also a summary of the change. Pair adjustments are also being recommended in the Community Services Fund. Keep in mind that this fund is self-supporting, so while these are not budget neutral adjustments, there is room within the fund balance parameters for these adjustments. These budget adjustments impact 3 areas of community services. The first is to create a new early childhood and family education program location. The second is to increase the outdoor learning space at Arborview Early Childhood Center. And the third is to add an EL teacher in the early childhood and family education program. Again, pair summaries for each of these requests is included in your board packet. Finally, pair adjustments are being recommended in the Food and Nutrition Services Fund. Similar to community service, this fund is self-supporting, and while these budget adjustments are not budget neutral, there is room within their fund balance parameters for each of these requests. These budget adjustments impact 3 areas of food and nutrition services: adding an assistant director of nutrition services, adding a chef supervisor position, and increasing our equipment purchases to support the replacement cycle across the district. Again, these pair summaries are included in your board packet this evening. So in conclusion, we are recommending that the school board approve these budget adjustments this evening. The second, also on the agenda this evening in the fiscal year 2020 capital expenditure budget. The school board discussed this budget at the January 8th work session as well, and I will provide an overview of the expenditures for the operating capital budget as well as the capital projects or technology levy budget. This slide shows the proposed budget for our operating capital by division and department. Operating capital is a zero-based budget, so each item included in this funding proposal was accompanied by a pair narrative and was moved through the LRFP process. The items included in the operating capital budget must align with statutory guidance for designation as a capital item. So any staff salary and benefits included in this capital budget must be directly related to the acquisition, operation, and maintenance of telecommunication systems, computers, and related equipment. Community engagements request of $178,332 on the top of this slide includes items such as the district webmaster, copier leases, equipment replacement for the 5 district auditoriums, and replacement of department equipment. Division of Leadership, Teaching, and Learning's requests for just over $2.6 million includes items such as the purchase of elementary music curriculum, curricular software licenses, and online resources, and media center materials. It also includes site allocations for student, teacher, and administrator furniture and equipment, uniforms and equipment for activities, and replacement of musical instruments. The Human and Administrative Resources team request of just over $5.5 million includes $4.2 million for all leases funded through our lease levy. In addition, division requests include continued payments for our capital leases and special assessment taxes, replacement and upgrade to video surveillance cameras, and the replacement of custodial and grounds equipment. And finally, our instructional and information tech team request of $971,535 includes annual fees for our enterprise applications such as Synergy, eFinance Plus, our maintenance of hard drives and wireless access, and other replacement technology. So the total for our operating capital expenditure budget is $9,320,755. This next slide shows the proposed budget for the capital projects or technology levy. This levy funding is a result of the voter approval in 2013. The budget request of just over $6.7 million includes the continuation of payments for existing mobile device leases, support for online resources, software licenses, technology equipment, and media materials. This levy also funds our I2T2 staff that support the district's technology infrastructure and instructional programming. We recommend approval of the fiscal year 2020 capital expenditure budget that includes operating capital and capital projects or technology levy expenditures for a total of $16,032,747. Tonight's approval budgets allows our staff to proceed with the staffing process and also to begin pre-planning for items that would require lead time for completion prior to the start of fiscal year 2020 school year. We will continue to finalize our budget details and will monitor the ongoing legislative session and the results for any impact that it may have on our 2020 budget. These budgets will be included with the entire budget package discussed at the June 4th school board work session and presented for school board approval at the June 18th, 2019 regular school board meeting. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Meyer. Board members, any questions?
Yes, Mr.
Director
Chair.
Craig?
Thank you. Thank you, Ron, for all your hard work. Thank you for our budget managers and the entire team that puts so much work into this every year. I do have some questions about the ESPs and the reducing the 5-hour days to 4-hour days. Can you speak to that a little bit and where we're gaining some additional FTE also?
We are actually increasing FTE in teachers and thus decreasing. And we had a lot of conversation at the LRFP advisory team process as a concern that rose up with that. And Kate Emmons and other within the DLTL staff did speak to the fact that that we're allocating these resources in teachers, and so we do feel like it's sufficient even with that decrease in the ESP.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
And I would just add, having participated in the LRFP advisory committee session, it was impressive to see the robust discussion and analysis by a wide range of participants on what the risks and benefits were associated with every pair adjustment. So I just have to say, as a finance professional, very impressive, and I really appreciate the process and the thoughtfulness that you put into this, your team put into this, and the participants in the committee put into this as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would just like to ask you to expand a little bit on Jessica's question. I'd like to know a little bit more details about where we're going to see those teacher,
Where the new teacher's going to be.
Thank you.
Sure.
There you go.
And I'm actually going to request if one of the assistant superintendents could speak to that a little bit more.
I'll look at that. So I think at this point, the final decision hasn't been made. We're hoping to recapture 5 special ed teachers. Right now, they're looking at putting those in the earlier grade levels, and the 5 sites haven't been determined yet, but that will be determined by student population as we start finalizing our numbers for enrollment.
Thank you for answering that. I just want to say that I have a lot of concerns about that. I feel like 15 support staff can cover more ground than 5 teachers. If 5 teachers are in only 5 locations, then how will that impact our students at the other locations where we currently have support staff?
Are we talking about 2 different things? One, we were talking about cutting hours from 5 to 4 on ESPs, but the other item was taking 15 ESPs and turning them into 5 teachers. So those 2 different items? Or are we talking about the same thing, which I'm not sure how we could be? What's that?
My understanding was that we were swapping.
Right, that was one, but I thought you were addressing the issue about the cutting of the hours from 5 to 4. So that's a different topic.
We're gaining the 5 FTEs.
So the 1
So we're
hour
gaining-
per para adds up to 15.33 FTEs.
Oh, that's
is what
okay.
they're saying.
All right.
Right, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, no, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, so
think
I just
brought
wanted to
something up.
express that I have a considerable concern about that and how it'll impact our students.
Sure.
Mr. Chair?
And again, I would say that there was considerable conversation, at least around the table and other tables that I heard with the advisory team as well with that. But again, conversation that's coming from our DLT team does believe that there'll be sufficient coverage with making this adjustment for that additional support in the classroom.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would add, I know fundamentally the conversation was what would be the best outcome for the students and the shifting of resources. So on that, as we monitor this change, should we find that we're not getting the result intended, would we hear of a different outcome or a change to something different if it's not yielding the result?
That's right. So as Director Douglas mentioned, there was a lot of concern at the LRFP process, which Tanya was a part of as well. And so there, I would go back to what her earlier comments were about the very hearty and robust conversations around that, and how the room felt comfortable at the end of those conversations that the impact from the direct classroom instruction was worth pursuing the change and going ahead and making a recommendation to the board to approve that. So there was a lot of conversation. You're not the only person that holds that concern, but I feel like people, through, again, a lot of conversation, felt that that was the right decision, and the right way to move was to get the direct instruction. In an ideal world, we would have all of it, but.
And to reiterate, it was consensus, as you saw in the forms that we sent out to board members, there was consensus with moving all of those, including that particular item.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Jackie.
So I just feel like I want to weigh in as a teacher in a classroom. I have concerns about cutting hours from 5 to 4 because I know that it's harder to retain staff when we have less hours available for them. I've seen it in action. However, I also have seen the caseloads of special ed teachers, and that they're spending an exorbitant amount of time on paperwork, and that they have the expertise to assist our students in the best way possible, so that if we're lessening caseloads, that will probably have it could have a greater outcome than having more ESP time. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate ESPs. My ESP is my lifesaver. I would like to see if there's a way that we can put retaining those ESPs as a top priority if there's extra funding coming somewhere, like if the legislative session says we have cross-subsidy funds or something like that, if that's appropriate.
Thank you, and that is the intent of the 5 classroom special ed teachers, is to lessen the caseload because of the exact reasons that you stated.
Mr. Chair, could I just
Yes,
say one more
sure.
thing? Thank you, both of you, all of you, for sharing your perspective and feedback. I really appreciate that. I still have concerns, and I agree that in a perfect world, we would be able to have both. And I think that as a board, we need to make it a priority to retain the support staff that we do have. And I just wanted to, again, express my concern and hope that we will monitor this closely and the impact it has on our students, so that if we need to make a change, we can do it swiftly.
I agree.
And I think it has to be monitoring what happens with our students. Are we meeting the goals that we're set by making these changes? And is it impacting our staff?
Yes.
You know, are there negative aspects or positive aspects? So we have to make sure that we take a look at that. So I appreciate everyone's comments on that. And I do know that there is at least one set of legislation at the House right now regarding cutting back some of that paperwork for special ed caseload, because it can be extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary amounts of paperwork. So I know there actually is a bill, and if everybody wants to follow that, you can try to find it online.
So I will commit, so thank you, board members, for sharing your input and your thoughts, and I commit that I will speak with our Director of Student Services, Kate Emmons, again, and share what was shared tonight, So that is really helpful when we make decisions moving forward in other budget years next year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any other questions or comments? So on this item, the first action item is the general fund budget adjustments for fiscal year 2020. And do we have a motion to approve the general fund budget adjustments for fiscal year 2020?
So moved.
So moved by Director Simons. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Craig. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So the next item is the capital fund budget for fiscal year 2020. Ron, you covered that. Is there any questions? Well, first, is there a motion to approve the capital fund budget for fiscal year 2020?
So moved.
Moved by Director Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Mosqueda Jones. Is there any discussion regarding the capital projects budget? No, I know we had a pretty good discussion regarding that at the work session. So if there is no discussion, time to vote. All in favor of approving the budget, say aye.
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 Opposed? All in favor? Well, I'm sorry, we're all in favor, so motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. Next action item is the 2018-2019 student calendar regarding makeup days. Dr. Balk.
Yeah, that item is mine. What I have proposed in front of you tonight is a motion to institute one student contact makeup day on Friday, March 8th, and then pre-approve a second student contact makeup day for either Friday, April 19th, or Monday, April 29th. And that's a little different than what your board packet had in it when Sherry sent it out last Friday. And the assistant superintendents, along with Joel, threw me a curveball today and gave me some other options to think about. And so I'm asking for some flexibility in your motion tonight. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think there's a need to recapture some lost instructional time. The district back in 13-14, when we had another one of those winters of multiple cancellations and whatever, we had 6 days that year. We're at 5 days right now. We still have a lot of winter to go. If you remember, our winter last year went to April 19th, 20, and 21st with 30-some inches of snow. Someone asked me today, when's the latest you canceled school? And I said it was May 2nd when we had 11 inches of snow, and that was about 6 years ago. So it seems like winter doesn't want to go away in some seasons or some years. Looking at the 13-14 school year, it looked like a 1-to-3 ratio. So that's what you see in the document tonight, looking at one makeup day for every 3 days that we've missed. And then we are on that cusp right now as we have 5 days. So we'd be looking at adding that second day if we have to cancel another full day. I know that Joel and Laurel have had some preliminary discussion with our employee groups. We'll have to go back and take a look at that alternative of 19th or 29th. And I know Kelly's looking at me right now saying, where did that come from? Based on our conversation a few weeks ago. But we'll have time to catch up on that and then visit with our teacher group about it. I know we have parents that'll have plans on either one of those 2 days, and we'll have to go through our regular reporting and accept absences as they come to us. I know we'll have to work through some staff things, and Joel has already got some things ready to go in that area. And we'll hold off on communication. We'll talk about the March 8th day immediately, depending on your action tonight, and we'll let parents know that we will figure out the 19th, 29th situation, but we'll have some clear communication around that. I know some of you have asked me what are other school districts doing. What I know as of today, Elk River is making up 2 days, Brooklyn Center 2 days. Forest Lake is looking at 2 days, depends on what the governor has done, whether that stands or not. And just to kind of clarify that, the governor does not have the right to waive instructional days or instructional hours. The governor does have the right under statute 12.21 to close schools or alter a school schedule. And, but they can't waive this total number of hours and days. there is no financial penalty if you don't make those hours and days. And Governor Dayton, Governor Carlson many, many years ago, and now Governor Walz has said, we're not going to come after you, school district, if you do not make up that time, but it is your choice how you, proceed forward. And so that's why you're getting the recommendation tonight. I think, beyond that, I know that the team over there is exhausted like I am right now of talking in the morning. We had a 4 p.m. Weather seminar this morning, followed by a 4:45 meeting to decide what we were going to do. And we are looking at trying to be a little more flexible in the future. I know Anthony and the assistant soups are already working on e-learning day next year. And if that can come to fruition, probably our secondary students is where the focus would be right now. We would, in fact, be instituting something like that. I know Kelly and I have talked about it because we have to work with our teachers also to make sure that that can take place. Back to the point I said, beyond the other school districts, I do not know of anyone else making up time. Edina, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Wayzata, Eden Prairie, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Orono, Richfield, Anoka, Hennepin, Fridley, Robbinsdale, and Centennial, as of a week ago, had no intention to make up time. Now, there's a caveat there, too. We have to remember, we have one of the shortest school years as far as number of days. A lot of districts we have 172. A lot of districts will have 174, 175. But more importantly, in our district, what we've talked about, it's the hours in our secondary day. We are right at the bare minimum. Our elementaries are fine and have plenty of days left and plenty of hours left that we've banked during the course of the year. So that may be something that in the future you want to take a look at. It means working with our teachers and our contract, and there's some things there too. But so when you hear of other districts not moving to make up days, or some of them, it's probably because they have that additional time built into their calendar. So with that, our recommendation is that you would approve March 8th and then give us flexibility on the 19th and 29th. Those days, either one of those days would not be instituted unless there's a 6th cancellation. And really what we'd be doing if we do what the assistant soup said, is we'd be taking that staff development day on the 29th, putting it on the 19th, and the real makeup day for students would then become April 29th. And we know that the 19th for some families is a religious holiday weekend, so we're trying to take that into account a little bit too. So with that said, I'll stand for questions if there's a motion and a second and discussion.
Okay. Is there a motion for board approval to institute one student contact makeup day on Friday, March 8th, and to pre-approve a second student contact makeup day for either Friday, April 19th, or Monday, April 29th?
So moved.
No, I was just saying, is there a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Director Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Simons. Is there any discussion regarding this? Go ahead.
Probably going to say the same thing you are. So I just really want to express the appreciation for the time and effort and countless phone calls and deliberations and evaluation of all of the different factors and variables that go into the decision to close school for a day. So I really appreciate that. I know that it's taken a lot of work, so thank you.
And yeah, thanks for bringing up the another option. And I appreciate everybody working on that, and I appreciate our bargaining units working with us to help implement what would be right for everybody. So thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so for all parents listening, we will have a makeup day on Friday, March 8th.
Barb and I will start working on communication tomorrow morning.
All right, the next action item is approval of gifts to the district, and totaling $131,672.99. So is there a motion to approve the gifts to the district of $131,672.59?
You better believe it. Oh.
Moved by Director Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Director Mosqueda Jones. Is there any discussion? Well, I will always discuss and say thank you very much for everyone's generosity, from the PTOs to the community members, personal members, to boosters, to corporations, to churches, to everyone who takes a part of their treasure and gives it to us. So thank you very much for that. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, and we are very grateful for your donations. Next item on the agenda is the first reading of policies. Mr. Palmetier.
Thank you, Chair Staffy, school board members, and Superintendent Bauk. As Director Craig and Dr. Craig reported earlier in this meeting, there are 3 policies on the agenda for first reading tonight. The first 2 policies recommended for first reading tonight are Policy 806, Crisis Management, and Policy 807, Health and Safety. The current version of Policy 806 was adopted in 2006, and it addresses both crisis management and broader health and safety concerns. It was recommended by administration that the current policy be divided into 2 separate policies to address crisis management and health and safety separately. The establishment of 2 separate policies is consistent with MSBA model policy and also how responsibilities are currently divided between the 2 coordinators in the district's health and safety department. The proposed rewritten version of Policy 806, Crisis Management, is required by law. The proposed policy has been revised to align with current formatting standards. Substantively, the proposed policy reflects our current practices and establishes clear directives for administration to develop emergency preparedness guidance for school sites, and it requires the development of crisis management teams, again, consistent with what we're doing in large part, in providing defined responsibilities for each team member on both district and building level teams. And finally, the policy sets forth the requirements of Minnesota law prescribing the number of lockdown, fire, and tornado drills that are conducted each year. Next for consideration on first read is proposed Policy 807. As indicated, this is the second part of the split policy. This policy separately addresses district health and safety programs. While school districts were previously required to adopt health and safety policies to qualify for specific funding, this requirement is no longer required by state law. It's been repealed. Despite this fact, the policy committee recommended carrying forward the fundamental requirements of this current policy 806 and the proposed policy in order to maintain the district's commitment to health and safety of students, staff, and school visitors. The proposed policy has been revised to align with current formatting standards. All the substantive requirements from the former policy have been maintained in the proposed policy. And the only modification to the proposed policy is to delete the reference in the current policy to workplace accident and injury reduction programs, or AWARE programs, since general school operations are not really required by state regulations as industry covered by such reporting requirements. And finally, Policy 922, non-use of chemicals on school premises, is before the board tonight for first read. The policy was last revised in 2001. While the policy is not specifically mandated by law, possession of controlled substances and alcohol, with some minor exceptions, are prohibited by state law. The revised policy maintains the current policy prohibition on the use of prohibited chemicals. The only proposed revisions include updated formatting and inclusion of a definition of school property to more clearly define the parameters of the policy. First reading begins a 4-week period for reaction to proposed policy changes by concerned groups and individuals. After a 4-week period, the school board may adopt or repeal or amend a policy after a second reading. The proposed policies are available on the school district website with the agenda for this meeting. Comments on the policies discussed here tonight may be directed to the school board or myself. Comments on the policies may also be provided online from the school board policies and procedures website located on the school district webpage located on the school district's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmetier. Next on the agenda is selection of finalists for our superintendent position. And before we do that, it's probably going to be a longer session. I'm going to ask that we go into a 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back here and keep things going. So We will hit that agenda item after a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Comfortable speaking whatever they're feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, we are back from recess, and at this time, I will ask Patty Phillips and Ken Dragseth of School Exec Connect to facilitate the next item on the agenda, which is the selection of finalists for the position of Superintendent of Osseo Area Schools. Ken?
Thank you, Chair and Directors. Just a quick review of where we've been. It's great to be at this point, and that the process is, you remember, started a long time ago. We took the profile that you developed previously, and our goal in all this process was to find people who would match that profile, people that would do a great job in this district. We ended up with 22 applications completed. We had talked to many other people, and we had a number of people who started the process, and we intervened depending upon what we thought if they would match or not. We ended up with 10 individuals that we brought in front of a board subcommittee for screening. The board subcommittee and us brought that down to 5 finalists. 4 of those were interviewed last night, and 1 person was to be interviewed tonight. However, he called us today and said that he had accepted a job in a suburban Omaha district. So unfortunately not being able to be part of this process. The next step in the process tonight is to see if we have people to move forward for a more intense process next week. And just want to go quickly over that process so people are aware of what will happen. Either starting next Tuesday, Wednesday, and or Thursday, depending upon whether you do 2 or 3 finalists, that individual will come back to the district for their day. And their day will start out with interviewing with a couple of groups, both elementary and kid staff and students in the morning. And at that time, in the mid-morning, then they'll take a tour of the district and get to see what the Osseo Area Schools district is like. There will be a cabinet interview. There will also be a lunchtime for them. In addition to just these groups meeting with them, they will be doing a writing exercise and preparing for a 15-minute presentation that will occur in the community time. The afternoon will also meet with a management exchange and then a secondary and kid staff before they make a public presentation at 5 o'clock. And we invite the community to that. In all of the groups during the day, the candidate will tell a little bit about themselves, and then it's a open question and answer session. So whatever the elementary teachers or staff want to ask, they can ask within obviously the legal bounds of answering questions. Once all of that presentation and question answer session has ended, we ask each of the people who are part of that process to give us feedback on how they think they match the profile, and if there are any other concerns or issues they may have that the board should take note of. All of those documents after each session will be copied and made available to the board for when they come later in the day. And so you'll be able to review all of those prior to your interview later that evening. At the 5 o'clock session, the public again is invited. The individual will make a 15-minute presentation on a topic selected by the district, and then be a Q&A session for another 15 minutes roughly, and then there will be a general kind of open session for the candidate to answer questions from the community who would be there. And Patty and I will be there to assist that process all through the day as we go through that. Then there will be a time for downtime for the candidate and dinner for the board. And then the final board interview each night will be at 7:30 and run roughly from 7:30 to 8:30. So at the end, then, depending upon whether we have 2 or 3 finalists, it'll either be the Tuesday, Wednesday, or it'll be the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday situation. The final conclusion then, at some point after all the interviews are over, the board will have to make a decision whether they find a candidate that they want to enter into negotiations with to be the next superintendent of the Osseo Area Schools. So that's kind of the process, so everybody understands that. And again, tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Patty, and she's going to take the board through a little process and see if we can narrow down our 4 finalists down to 2 or 3 that we'll bring forward next week. Thank you.
And I just wanted to make sure that the listening audience understands that the board's decision tonight, they're not hiring a superintendent tonight. They're just bringing back 2 or 3 individuals that they would like to have the staff and the community and themselves delve into a little bit deeper. I also want to say that I know the listening audience, the people that were here yesterday, some people sat through all of the interviews, all 4 of them, and if they didn't, there were people at home who gave feedback to the board. And I just want to make people aware that the board has seen much more than a 45-minute interview with each candidate. They got a very thick packet. Their homework was to look through an application with a lot of open-ended questions from all of the candidates. They also received the copies of their licensure, their transcripts from college, and they also received the references from some individuals. Some had as many as 10 reference letters. Some had 8, some had 6, some had 4, but a couple pages each often. And these are individuals that have worked with these candidates for sometimes 20-plus years. So it's hard in a 45-minute interview to get a real picture of these candidates, but I think the board will agree that those reference letters are very helpful. And in addition, Ken and I vet these candidates very deeply and talk to a lot of people about them and the gifts they bring to the table. So what we're going to do today is we're not picking a superintendent, but Ken's going to pass out a piece of paper. And on the paper, it's numbered 1 through 4. And what we'd like you to do as he passes these out, and the board hasn't had any discussion up to this point. The discussion will follow. But they're going to write down who, if you could only bring back 1 candidate, if you were going to, which we're not, we're going to bring back 2 or 3, who is your number 1 person that you'd like to have another look at? Who is your number 2?
Thank you.
Who is your number 3? And who is your number 4? So and I have the names written on this whiteboard. And what we're going to do is when you're finished, Ken will collect them, and then we'll put them on the chart, and then we'll start a discussion. They're listed here in the order in which you interviewed them.
Do you want us to put our name on this or leave? Do you want our names on our sheet? Okay.
Had the most firsts, seconds, thirds, and then at the at individuals that have quite a few 4s. So when we look here, we have a 4, a 4, a 4. And this individual also had the highest score, which would be the least desirable, the highest score. You want the lowest score in this, multiples, first, seconds, and thirds. So, yeah, and this individual, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So you've got, absolutely. This individual, you end up having 3 first place, and 2, 3, and 4. So we've got some discussion that needs to go there. So typically what we do in this case is discuss, is there one person that it looks like you may want to just say, it looks like there's not enough support for that person? Pardon? Oh. This one's not working? Am I loud enough? Should I use the gym voice? How about we go like this? All right, take this.
Was that JYM or JIM, Patty?
Right. No, I think what we try to do also when we look at these numbers is if you're going to bring back, let's say, 2 candidates, just throw that out, how many of these, you know, like I look at Corey McIntyre, 5 out of 6 have him in 1 or 2, or 2. All right, which would indicate to me that there's a general consensus that you want to bring him back. Okay, now you can, you know, have a discussion about that. All right, likewise, when I look at Ryan over on the right side, 4 of the 6 have you either 1 or 2. So you can start from there. What I would say with Steve, there's only 1 that would have it 1 or 2. And that would indicate to me that there really isn't enough push to take that person forward. Obviously, 1 person had 1, and they can speak to that. Okay, all right. So that's, and then with Lisa, you have 2 in the top 2, and then you have a 3, 4, 3, 4. So that's kind of on the edge. So one of the things you can do is there one person that you feel like there's a general consensus we should drop off?
Yeah, I think the scores would indicate that that is the case, to drop out Mr. Trowen.
There is one person who had a 1, so if they want to speak to that.
I'll go ahead and speak to that. I did select him. I really liked Steve. I liked his solid Minnesota background. He would do well, I think, in this district or any district. But I'm willing to, seeing the consensus, I'll go with the board and the scores.
Okay.
It might be worth noting that, as was mentioned at the end of the first interviews, these were all very strong candidates. Absolutely. Very, very strong candidates. They all had strong experiences. They had quite a bit of breadth and depth. The candidates all had unique skill sets in terms of that depth. So I just want to make that very clear that these were all very strong candidates, and this, while this ranking process, we kind of jumped right into it. I know everybody spent quite a bit of time analyzing this. I know we spent hours reviewing the information. I know myself and others certainly have reviewed, gone back and looked at the videos, right? I think many of us did that. And this process, while it appears like very simple, was not a simple process to arrive at these rankings. I just want to be clear on that.
Well said.
Exactly.
I appreciate it.
So, and I think I agree with Director Simons, is that I think the numbers are speaking very clearly here.
Yep.
And, you know, when we're looking to start going and coalescing around a candidate or 2 or 3, then I think that we need to thank Mr. Trone, but focus on some of the others.
Okay, now the decision you have is you have 3 left, and you know we have 3 dates set up, so it's really up to you as a board whether 2 of those 3 ought to go forward or all 3 ought to go forward.
Any thoughts?
I would say that I think it's pretty clear by the numbers that for sure Two of the candidates we should bring back, Corey and Dr. Lager, based on how we've all ranked them. I am not sure about Lisa. I think that with it's very split, I feel like. And so I'd like to hear from other board members' perspectives before we just say we're only going to bring these two back.
So I'd like to say that I would recommend looking at the numbers, bringing 3 back. If we're specifically speaking to Lisa, I think she brings some skills, a skill set that our district is in much need of around change management, taking some of our most pressing issues and that are some of the hardest to discuss and talk about and bringing it to the forefront and to bring some consensus and some conversation. And I think that she's very asset driven. She has a really wide knowledge of budget and being in a large district like ours, larger than ours, and really understanding the different competing interests in a district. And then when I look at the community feedback, it's very overwhelmingly positive. People are really, she had an energy about her that I think people really were attracted to. So I don't know, do we get into, I guess I would move forward that we do all 3.
I think at some point, we'll need an action item to approve whatever the slate is.
Right.
So at some point, after you've had your discussion, someone can make a motion to whatever, and if you agree or disagree, you can amend it, like in any other motion.
The feedback, quite honestly, on every candidate was very positive. You know, for the most part, it was all very positive. I was adding up all of the 5s and 4s, and almost everything was 60-70% of the people on almost every category. So we did a good job with the screening, and you did a good job with sourcing. So that worked out very well, and I think all the candidates did a very good job last night. So I think there's everyone left out of the 3 all have very strong positive things that probably resonate with each of us. There's enthusiasm. There is working with a huge district doing multiple jobs. There is, and that pretty much goes for everybody. So everyone's had big district experience. One's had small district experience. I think 2, maybe all have had, depending upon how you define small. So there's a broad range. I don't know, there's obviously a breakdown between 1 and 2, or actually, 2 I think is pretty solid. Everybody's supporting Mr. McIntyre. We have strong support for Mr. Lager, and we have support, strong and weak, for Ms. Sales.
Yep.
So, we have 4 people putting her close to the bottom or at the bottom. But we also have 2 people putting Mr. Lager at the bottom. So, I don't, can we talk our way out of this to go to 2? And it would be, with Mr. McIntyre and somebody else. And I think just from the numbers, it would be, Mr. Lager and Mr. McIntyre. I think the question here is, do we also bring in a 3rd person, since we have that set up? And will there be, what can be done during those interviews?
Usually it starts fresh again.
Yeah, right.
Oftentimes it's the person that gets the best reviews in the first round. It might flip. They might continue. It's hard to tell. But you would get you've been so transparent. This is a community that really listens to their community and gives them a voice. And you'd have an opportunity, you know, to open it up to those stakeholders that are a part of the process. They're here for 13 hours each day, from 7:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night. So it's your decision how you'd like to.
No, the interviews last year to the second round, it was very helpful, and it was very different. You saw a different side, and, you know, that, you know, led to some decisions. So, I mean, any thoughts from
I would like
2
to
or
see
3?
us go forward with 3.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I'd like to add that, echoing what Tanya had said, that all 4 of these candidates were phenomenal. And it was very, very difficult for me to rank them. And so I also feel that it would be, I don't see any issue with bringing all 3 forward, being that they're all such strong candidates.
Yep.
And in the future discussions and interviews that we have with them, we might see
You'll sort out, yep.
more.
You'll get more information to make your decision at the end.
Yeah.
I agree.
Dr.
Yeah,
Simon?
I'm just reviewing my notes and kind of where I thought the strengths of the candidates were. I felt that the top 2 were differentiated in terms of their concrete examples and their breadth of experience, variety of seeing many different experiences. So I felt that those 2 are differentiated. I think the scores reflect that. However, I certainly think that our 3rd candidate was very strong and had many contributions and examples in answering the questions as well. So I think it's worth bringing 3 back to continue to explore more deeply.
Someone, are you ready to make a motion?
And I agree, you know, so I think the issue around giving everybody their say in another way of being in front of the community and being in front of us and answering different type of questions, you know, I think it's pretty clear that we have the capacity to do that, and I think we ought to bring all 3 back, so.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to bring back 3 candidates, Corey McIntyre, Ryan, is it Lager?
Yep.
And Lisa Sales Adams.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? No? With that, let's all vote. All in favor of bringing back a slate of 3 candidates, Mr. McIntyre, Mrs. Sales Adams, and Dr. Lager, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations to the 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next process now, we will contact all 4 of them, and we will look at their schedules on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to fit best their schedule. So, and we would, hopefully, tomorrow we'll know that. So,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah,
I mean,
Tuesday, Wednesday.
That's all right.
Keep it in Mondays off, you know, yes, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I won't be on Monday, but,
Okay.
yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll look at their schedule, match it up, and then, we will let, we'll let you know as soon as we know, which should be no later than tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to next week with you. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
You're going to turn them in, and you're going to store all those documents as you typically do in your district.
Okay.
Before you go tonight, you have all 5 candidate documents right now. You are only to keep your 3 finalists. If you would pull out the other materials, Sherry and I will take them, and we will store them in HR. So any other materials with the other, excuse me, 1 candidate. I keep thinking it was 2 because we were supposed to interview someone.
Well, we still have their information.
Yeah, you do have, that's right, you do have that person's information, so.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So only keep the materials that you have for the 3 candidates moving forward and create a pile for Sherry and I to take with us, and we'll keep it in HR.
Chair Osseo, I forgot one thing. We will be doing intensive background checks now on these 3 candidates, so I have all the information from them, and we will request that background information be back to us by next Thursday. Then we can use that for deliberation if you need to.
Okay. All right, with that, our last agenda item is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7,
49.
clock disappeared, 7:49 PM. Thank you.